Furman from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Gus Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Curtis Rogers, who does such amazing work over at 710 Seattle Sports. We're going to chat with him about what we can expect out of these final Big Ten games on Sunday, what to expect out of the Big Ten tournament, how he's taking a look at the West Coast landscape in terms of some of those top teams, and just a few teams in general that he thinks are very intriguing this time of year that might have a little bit of value, and just the top teams in the sport as well. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we had a great day of college basketball on Saturday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
UConn has actually been one of the worst against the spread teams this season, and it got worse. They're now 11-20 against the spread. They do not get the job done on the road outright on the money line against Marquette. They lose this game by a count of 68-62. Just 3 of 24 from three-point range. Terrace Reed did have 16 points, 10 rebounds, and for UConn, they won the rebound battle 40-25, but they were as cold as heck from the floor. For UConn, they also lost the turnover battle 16-13 as well. For Marquette, they did have Nigel James go off in this game for 19 points. They're able to land a nice win. Too little, too late for Marquette, but hey, they do find a way there. For Houston, they get the win, but they do not get the cover against Oklahoma State. This by a count of 82-75, so very high scoring for a Houston game. And Houston now below 500 against the spread. They do go 12 of 28 from three-point range, as off the bench, Chase McCarty was able to come on very strong, 20 points. He goes 6 of 9 from three-point range, very nice for him. And for Houston, they do win the turnover battle 11-9, but for Oklahoma State, they did a pretty solid job on glass. They won the rebound battle 36-33, as you had Anthony Roy in this game be able to supply the team with 18 points, so Oklahoma State was able to remain lively. For the Darius Acuff-less Arkansas Razorbacks, they get a nice win over Missouri, 88-84 the final. Malik Thomas came up big in this game. He had 28 points, and for Arkansas, you only had one guy play more than 5 minutes off the bench. That'd be Malik Ewan in a game that was a little bit of a marathon. For Missouri, they go 18 out of 24 at the free throw line, and they lose the turnover battle 13-11. As for Arkansas, they did win the battle on the glass as well, 38-34 for Missouri. Mark Mitchell did his best. He had 32 points, but not enough in this one. For Virginia, win but no cover against Virginia Tech. 76-72 final in this one. As for Virginia, they go 9-25 from three-point range. For Virginia Tech, just 8 of 32. And for Virginia Tech, they were close in this game, but had a few missed free throws by Ben Hammond late that were very costly. Ogana Onyesu had a nice game for Virginia off the bench as well. 16 points. He goes 2 of 3 from three-point range as a true 7-footer to go along 3 blocks as well. So Virginia gets the job done. Mike Young was not too happy about Ogana Onyesu being a hit of 3. For Iowa State, they were down at the half against Arizona State, 86-65. And Arizona State, by the way, has actually been a really good cover team. So them absolutely upchucking the cover in this game was a little bit surprising, as they're now 19-11-1 against the spread, as Iowa State wins that second half 49-24, and Iowa State 86-65 winners as they go 11 of 29 from three-point range. For Iowa State, you had Joshua Jefferson go off for 16 points, 7 rebounds. Jamarian Bateman off the bench, he was able to go 3 of 5 from three-point range. And for Arizona State, it just fell all apart with the ball security. They lose the turnover battle 23-9. You had in this game Asamba Diop go off for 12 points, 3 rebounds, and 7 turnovers. Mo Odom had 7 turnovers of his own, so that was less than great for them. For Kentucky, they were unable to get the cover here. They tried their best. They nearly got within the number, but 84-77 for Florida. They do get the job done. In a lot of places, Florida closed more in that neighborhood, about 5.5 points. So you might have been able to get a very, very, very early 7.5 on Kentucky. I know there were a lot of 7s out there overnight, but for Florida, 8 of 18 from three-point range. They only win the rebound battle 41-40, but they were able to get a really nice performance out of Thomas Hall, who was missing in the previous game. 20 points, 9 rebounds. For Florida, they do lose the turnover battle 10-9 and 20 out of 32 at the free throw line. If you took a really bad number of Florida, you have that to blame for them not covering. Ortega Owe was able to supply 28 points, but Florida, they continue to look rock solid. Right now, St. Louis is not. St. Louis is still about one of your best against the spread teams in all of college basketball, with this loss and non-cover for St. Louis. Now against the spread, they're hovering, depending upon closing numbers, right around 17, 11, and 2 against the spread, but George Mason absolutely takes the two of them. 86 of 57 the final. St. Louis goes 4 of 24 from three-point range. They lose a rebound battle, 41 to 26. They lose a turnover battle, 12 to 10, and all of a sudden George Mason starting to find a little bit of something here. Jari Long, 21 big points. That was a very impactful win for them. For Vanderbilt, they anchor down and they get a road win against Tennessee, 86-82 the final. How about a very overwhelming second half? This game was 32-22 with Vanderbilt leading at the half. Tennessee outscored Vanderbilt 60-54 in the second half. We saw a lot of those on Saturday. Saturday was a very overwhelming day as Tennessee 6-24 from 3. Vanderbilt didn't even take a lot of threes. They went just 5-10 from the outside, but Tyler Tanner, he was able to supply the team with 25 points. Vanderbilt made their free throws 27 out of 32 at the free throw line, and they do overcome losing the turnover battle 14-11 and the rebound battle 40-31. So that was a relatively fun one. For Alabama, they were all over Auburn in this game. 96-84 the final, just barely goes over the total line. For Alabama, 7-27 from 3. So it's not like they were sharp there, but they dominated every other facet of the game. 42-28, Alabama wins the rebound battle. 13-8, they win the turnover battle. They had on their side LeBaron Filan and Aiden Holloway be able to give you 21 points apiece. For Alabama, they sent Auburn to their 15th loss. I have to think it's going to be hard for them to make the NCAA tournament with that many losses. And for Duke, they do find a way to be able to persevere, but not cover against North Carolina. This got up to as high as like 18.5 points in some spots. 76-61 the final. For North Carolina, they do go 9-24 from 3. They got dominated on the glass. They lose the rebound battle 42-29. They do lose the turnover battle 14-8, but for Duke, not necessarily the best shooting day for them. 10 of 32 from three-point range. Cameron Boozer just continues to supply. 26 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists, and for North Carolina, keeping them lively. Derek Dixon, nice game out of him. 17 points, 5 of 8 from three-point range. Have to do this before we're going to get a final in some of these other late games, but right now, Texas Tech in the first half over BYU, they've been able to get a nice lead. We'll see what BYU is able to do because, man, not necessarily great for them without Richie Saunders, and things are not great for Kansas State right now. They get absolutely mollywopped by Kansas. 104-85 the final, as Kansas has been a really good under team thus far this season. They're still one of your top under teams in all of college basketball. 10 overs to 21 unders. Duke is also 10 overs to 21 unders, so that's been another really nice under team for you. But for Kansas, they win this game even with Kansas State being able to get a pretty solid performance out of PJ Haggerty, 21 points, 5 rebounds. He was missing in the previous game. Off the bench, Darren Peterson, 27 points, goes 6 of 7 at the free throw line, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, looked very sharp in this game. Trey White, he was able to come up with 23 big points. Hey, maybe that's the key because he got benched obviously for senior day. They want to give Justin Cross and Wilder Evers some minutes, so good for those guys, but for Kansas State, a very nice win and cover for them. And then if you're looking at some of the most demonstrative teams with regards to against the spread, overs and unders, obviously Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin has been your best cover team at 22-7 against the spread. We'll be seeing them in action a little bit later on during the week. But that said, for West Georgia, they are 21-7 against the spread. Rock solid out there in the Atlantic Sun, and their season unfortunately came to an end on Friday as they took the loss against Queens NC 71-63, and now Queens NC going to be battling out against Central Arkansas in the final of the Atlantic Sun. Queens NC 90-83. They take down SB. Central Arkansas 73-63. They take down a Florida Gulf Coast team that ends the year 9-22-1 against the spread. Just all sorts of brutal for them. They just were not able to cover numbers all season long. So that was a little bit rough. Another team has been really nice for you against the spread. The Navy we're going to be seeing on Sunday. They're 29-1 against the spread. And with that cover for Central Arkansas, 19-9-3 against the spread. Another team that has a 19-9 against the spread mark, that would be Sam Houston. They don't have the pushes that Central Arkansas does, but for Sam Houston, they lose and they do not cover against Liberty. 79-72 72 the final. For Sam Houston, they do go 8 of 16 from three-point range, but 14 out of 36 for Liberty. Liberty does a nice job in terms of holding the Bearcats on the inside as well. Sam Houston, they go 20, and if math serves me correct, out of 46 on their two-point shots, and Liberty, they were able to shoot over 50% from the floor. At Cleveland, 19 points, 9 boards, 9 assists, so he was able to come through, and for Sam Houston State, unable to get the job done in this one. Another team that's been able to cover quite a few numbers thus far this season has actually been Cal State Fullerton. They are up to 18-10-1 against the spread. We've had a lot of intriguing Big West teams, and for Fullerton, they go on the road and they knock off Cal State Northridge by kind of 90-77, and for CSUN, in this game, they just got a little bit sloppy with it. They lose the turnover battle 20-11, and for Cal State Fullerton, how about 18 out of 47 from three-point range? Christian Williams was 5 of 13 from three. The bench as a whole had 9 made threes. Just an absolute expose of three-point shooting from Fullerton, so shout out to those guys. They very much were able to get the job done in that one. If you're looking at your worst against the spread teams, Kansas City, they closed 5 and 23 against the spread. They were by far your worst against the spread team in all of college basketball, but Mississippi State has been all sorts of rough, 10 and 21 against the spread thus far this season, and then they do lose on Saturday to Georgia. Georgia is able to get the job done in a nice high-scoring expose, 102-96 the final. As for Mississippi State, they do go 9 of 23 from three, but they allowed Georgia to go 17 out of 29 from three. Cannon Catchings, 5 of 7 from three-point range, 23 points. Marcus Millender and Jeremiah Wilkerson off the bench combined to go 6 of 12 from three, 33 points between those two guys. This was a closing number that in a lot of places at Georgia is a 5.5 point favorite, so another non-cover for Mississippi State, so that one was a little bit rough for them. Drake, 11 and 21 against the spread. They were making a little bit of a bonsai charge in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament. That came to an end, though, as they fall to Illinois Chicago 72-51 the final. As for the Drake, they just weren't unable to hit anything in this game. 7-27 from three, 18 out of 56 from the floor, and not like UIC lit it up from three, 5 of 22 from three, but they won the rebound battle by a count of 40-28, so they do find a way to persevere, and they'll face off against a Northern Iowa team that just barely got the job done against Bradley, 73-69 the final. A rare over for Northern Iowa, by the way, so they do find a way there. And then if you're looking at a few other teams that have been very intriguing with regards to overs and unders, your top under team continues to be Fordham, 7 overs to 21 unders. They and Penn 6 overs, 19 unders, and a push. They did play another under on Friday, by the way, since I couldn't do the recap yesterday. For Penn, 82-61 final in that game against Brown. That closed more around about a 146 total, but that said, in terms of Old Fordham, they played a big giant slog on Saturday. As for Fordham, they do a nice job in terms of holding down Rhode Island, 61-49 final in this game. As for Fordham, they go just 19 out of 46 from the floor, but they win the rebound battle 40-26. 17 turnovers for Fordham, 16 out of Rhode Island, so very sloppy game, but Fordham goes 17 out of 21 at the free throw line, so a nice quality under and a nice game to be able to get the job done there. Oh, I forgot, Purdue failed to win another game. They lost 5 games at home this season. Wisconsin on the road, 97-93 the finals. Wisconsin 18 out of 34 from three-point range. Nick Boyd, John Blackwell combined 48 points, and then Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, they combine for 43 points. Purdue does go 11 of 25 from three-point range, but for Purdue, even though they win the rebound battle by a count of 34-22, they just were unable to hold up in this game. As Wisconsin, they do a nice job being able to pop it and lock it from three-point range, so that was another major result that we did see. Another team that's been very rock solid to the under, Northern Illinois, 8 overs to 20 unders. They were able to cash you an under on Friday against Akron. It's not necessarily because they play great defense. Akron was able to win that game very, very, very convincingly, as Akron won that game by 35 plus points, 94-55, but you were able to get an under in that game to backtrack just a little bit. And then if you're looking at some of your top over teams in all of college basketball right now, Xavier has been creme de la creme. 23 overs to 8 unders, as it's just been an expose of scoring in all their games thus far this season, and they lose to Villanova by kind of 91-78. They do not cover the 11.5 point spread, as Villanova 13 out of 31 from 3-point. Duke Brennan 20 points, 13 rebounds. He led the charge, and Xavier actually goes 14 of 14 at the free throw line. They win the turnover battle 12-7, but they shot just 41% from the floor, 56% out of Villanova. So Villanova is able to get the job done in that one. You've had New Mexico be a really good over team, 21 overs to 9 unders, and they played another one against Utah State. And for New Mexico, they don't get the outright win, but they did a nice job in terms of holding in this game, as it was 94-90 final in this. As for Utah State, they allowed New Mexico to go 13 out of 29 from 3, and for Utah State, reason why they win this game is because they go 30 out of 36 at the free throw line. For Utah State, they do lose the turnover battle 10-8, and actually lost the rebound battle 35-30, as Jake Hall, 32 big points out of him, and Tomislav Bujan was able to go for 11 points, 13 rebounds. So New Mexico did a nice job remaining lively. Notre Dame has been a really good over team, 22 overs to 9 unders, and against Boston College team that's actually been really good to the under this far this season. They made things overwhelming, as for Boston College, they do find a way to be able to persevere in this game, 77-69. Had just 63 points up in the first half, 80 plus in the second half, as Notre Dame 11 of 35 from 3, but they allowed Boston College to go 31 out of 41 at the free throw line. A Boston College team that doesn't really shoot it that well, so that was interesting to say the least. Fred Payne, the Payne Train, was able to give Boston College 24 points in that one. You've also had quite a few overs thus far this season out of the old Friars of Providence. Obviously, they have been one of your most up-tempo teams in all of college basketball, and for the Friars of Providence, they were able to play another over against Georgetown. They don't quite get the job done in this one, 80-79, the final. As for Georgetown, they were able to get a really good performance in this game, 25 points and 10 rebounds out of Vincent Iwuchukwu. He has been instrumental for them, giving a little bit of a surge. And for Providence, 13 out of 30 from three-point range in this game. So Providence, they've been one of those teams to catch you overs, 21 overs to 10 unders as far this season. Ole Miss, 20 overs to 11 unders as well. They've been a little bit of a sneaky over team thus far this season, with the defense very much diminishing for them thus far this season. And Ole Miss, they played a slog of a game against South Carolina. They lost outright as a big favorite, 64-61. The final, as for South Carolina, 9 of 29 from 3, and Ole Miss 1 of 14 from three-point range. Malik Diaz showed up. He gave the team 22 points, and really nobody else showed up for Ole Miss, so that was a little bit unfortunate for them. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise what we're getting in college basketball, should have mentioned as well, Air Force has been one of your worst teams against the spread in all of college basketball, 9-20-1 against the spread. And at the time of recording, they were down double figures against Nevada, but that was a spread of 25 and a half, so they have a chance to be able to cover that game. You'll know in the AM if they're able to do so or not. But if you're looking at what we've been getting trend-wise in college basketball, it certainly has been a year that has been favoring unders and underdogs, with a few results still pending for Saturday, since we've got all-day basketball at this point. 2,741 unders to 2,668 overs. Meanwhile, the underdogs, they're hitting at 51.3%, 2,777 and 2,631 against the spread. And if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, underdogs barking at about 52%, 151 and 139 against the spread. Meanwhile, 146 overs to 144 unders. So we've been seeing a lot of overs here over the last few days to be able to get that back above 50% for the last 7 days. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, about if we do chat it up with our good friend Curtis Rogers of 710 Seattle Sports Radio on Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Daily Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN, because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always a pleasure to be joined by this man, as we've got Curtis Rogers aboard. He does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He's doing a little bit of everything, as he's also doing pre- and post-game hosting for the Seattle Mariners. He's paying attention to the Seattle Kraken. He had just go through that entire Seattle Seahawks season. It's unfortunate that they didn't have a better season. All they had was a parade at the end of it, but Curtis, he gets through it all. He does an amazing job on so many different fronts. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at A Kid From Kent altogether. And Curtis, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, Greg, it's been quite a ride up here in the Pacific Northwest. Everything is perfectly led into the next season, football season leading into college basketball season, which is leading into baseball season. Couldn't ask for better timing. And hey, we are here. It is conference championship week. I'm super excited. This is sort of appetizer to the craziness that is March Madness, but I'm super excited to dive into all the conference tournaments that we got going on as the regular season wrapped up this past weekend, and it should be an incredible week of college basketball ahead of us.
Oh, it should be. We've got a few stray regular season games left on Sunday. We've got the American. We've got some Big Ten action as well. And just how do you take a look at things going into the Big Ten tournament? Because obviously you're based out there in the great state of Washington. And for the Huskies, it's obviously been a little bit of a downer of a year. And it's just so intriguing to take a look at this entire landscape because Michigan, I think, has very much separated themselves as the top team. But Purdue has been very lackadaisical. Teams from the West Coast, whenever they've had to travel outside the Pacific time zone, it's been all sorts brutal for them. And then you've got interesting teams like Michigan State along with Illinois.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be the potential for a 1 seed bid up for grabs if Michigan State can find their way through and win the Big Ten tournament, because with UConn slipping up on Saturday, that left the door open, I think, for the Spartans. It also left the door open for Florida to sort of leapfrog UConn for that final number 1 seed. I think Duke, Arizona, and Michigan are about as stone-cold locks as you could possibly have this far out from Selection Sunday for the 1 seeds. But that fourth 1 seed very much up for grabs. So there's still plenty to play for if you're Michigan State as well. But, yeah, I think Michigan, they should be the odds-on favorite in this tournament. They are the best team in the Big Ten, and they're the best team by quite a bit. They have been just so phenomenal all season long, really with very little weaknesses on that roster. I really like the job that Dusty May has done this season with the Wolverines. They should be a really fun story heading into the NCAA tournament. And I think this Big Ten tournament could definitely be a crowning achievement. An early crowning achievement for the Wolverines. Obviously, they've got bigger goals this year, but they are very deserving of a Big Ten title, that's for sure.
Yep, it is going to be a lot of fun to see what happens on Sunday as well, because they face off against a Michigan State team that, if you're looking for a team not named Purdue to make a big run in the NCAA tournament, that's the one that I have a star around. I'm not sure how you take a look at teams outside of Michigan and their prospects to be able to make a run, but I think they're interesting. I like what I see out of Illinois, but at the same time, for Illinois, it just feels like they haven't been able to close out big games. And then for Wisconsin, it feels like they might have the highest ceiling and the lowest floor out there in the Big Ten, because we've seen them win some incredible games. They go on the road, they knock off Purdue on Saturday, but they also lost at home to a USC team that hasn't beaten anyone on the road this year.
Yeah, you mentioned Wisconsin's boomer bust potential. They blew out Michigan State back around Valentine's Day. 92-71 was the final score of that game. So, yeah, the Badgers are a team where they're going to take some big swings. They're going to hit home runs, but they're also going to strike out. In the Big Ten race right now, Greg, Purdue had so much hype coming into the season. They were the preseason number 1 team in the AP poll. I believe they're under 500 in their last, I want to say, like 13 games or something. It's ridiculous how this Purdue team all of a sudden just cannot seem to buy a victory. They dropped 3 of their last 4 to finish out the regular season. That is a concern if you're the Boilermakers, for sure, especially a team that had as much hype as they did coming into the season. I would be very, very surprised if Purdue makes it all the way to the Final Four, because, look, they just have not played good ball.
The Final Four, perhaps like the Sweet 16.
Yeah, they could be out maybe first weekend of the tournament if they don't ship up and shape out, or shape up and ship out, whatever it is. But I think right now in the Big Ten, I think Michigan State, that game on Sunday is going to be special. I think that game is going to be incredible. And that game, if Michigan State were to beat Michigan, definitely opens the door for the Spartans to potentially become that fourth number 1 seed, because obviously they will leapfrog probably UConn in Monday's AP poll. And then if they're able to win out and win the Big Ten tournament, I don't think you can deny Michigan State that fourth number 1 seed.
Yep, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there. Although I will say that fourth number one seed, I'm not sure how you look at things. I think that right now that has to go to Florida because Florida is the team that I feel like is really starting to put it together. They've been needing backcourt play all season long, but I think that we both know how good these forwards are. And with Florida, where you take a look at the landscape right now in college basketball, you've got your main three teams in Arizona, Duke, along with Michigan. I think that they're the biggest threat to those big three with just what they've got down low and the pedigree of winning a title last year.
Absolutely. And the experience of winning a title, we don't have to look very far for the last repeat champion. It was just a season ago with UConn going back-to-back, and then Florida obviously winning it last year. You mentioned the veteran presences in that front court for Florida, Thomas Hoff, Alex Condon, Rubens Chinyelu. That is a really, really deep Florida team, and you look at just kind of how they've spread out their scoring. 6 guys in double figures this season. That is very impressive, especially with how their season started. They were 5-4 at one point, and I believe they've only lost 2 games since December. It has been a really nice run for them through the SEC this year. Now, the SEC not necessarily what it was a year ago, but still a very respectable conference. Their tournament run, I think, is going to hinge a lot upon the play of Xavier Lee. And as we know, backcourt play in the NCAA tournament is huge. Boogie Flanders played a lot of big minutes in his career. Not too worried about him, but Lee got out to such a slow start this year for Florida. It took him a while to really assimilate. Kind of wondered if this is a guy maybe playing in over his head, but things have settled down for him. But this is a lot bigger than any game he ever played at Princeton. This is not the Ivy League anymore. I think Florida's really title hopes could potentially rest on his shoulders, Boogie Fland's shoulders as well, because it is not Walter Clayton in the backcourt this year for Florida. It's a different cast of characters, so it'll be interesting to see how those two guys respond in these big moments. And you're absolutely right. I think Florida is that fourth number one seed right now, but depending on how things shake out, there could be a lot of movement over the course of the next week here.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that a team that played themselves out of that fourth number one seed is UConn, as we do have Curtis Rogers, who does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And typically a loss to Marquette isn't something that's absolutely terrible. And this year, I can tell you from being in the great state of Wisconsin, it's absolutely awful. And how do you take a look at them moving forward? Because UConn, you just mentioned it, they're the last team to go back-to-back. They've won 2 out of the last 3 titles, and for UConn, it's not like they've been awful this year, but it just feels like they've left a little bit of something to be desired, and now losing here in the last few weeks to Creighton and Marquette does lead to some concerns.
Yeah, that is not the best way to wrap up your regular season with a couple of losses like that in the season's final 5 games. They had really just kind of moved swiftly through the Big East. Their only blemish prior to that Creighton loss was that loss to St. John's. And that's not a bad loss by any stretch of the imagination. St. John's also ranked at the time. It is not anything to be ashamed of. But that Marquette loss, Greg, that was an ugly scene at the end of the game, too, with Dan Hurley bumping the official. I am stunned he is not suspended for at least the opener of the Big East tournament. Anytime you make contact with an official, that should warrant, I think, an automatic 1-game suspension. He does get a hit to his pocketbook, but I don't think that's going to stop him from doing what he does. But they were the biggest losers over the weekend. That loss to Marquette, a bad Marquette team, that is going to tank your chances at a number 1 seed. You can lock them in as a number 2 seed for sure come Selection Sunday.
Yep, I'm thinking so as well. And we have to talk a little bit about the West Coast landscape as well, because, Curtis, you are out there in the great state of Washington, and we have yet to see Gonzaga in action because you get the 100 million billion buys out there in the WCC tournament. WCC always doing them right. But how do you take a look at they and just some of the other top teams out there in the West Coast? Because it does feel like it's a little bit of a down year just across the West Coast. And for Gonzaga, without having Braden Huff in the lineup, it just feels like things have been a little bit off with them recently.
Yeah, they have been missing his presence for sure. Not to say that they've had a disappointing season at 28-3 and have really kind of outplayed projections prior to this point in the year, but I think their ceiling is very limited without Braden Huff. I would imagine he tries to give it a go when they get to the NCAA tournament. I just don't think that he is done for the season. I don't think Gonzaga wants him to be done for the season. I think they might be being a little judicious with how they handle his playing time, especially dealing with that injury. Graham Ike, a very, very veteran presence down low. Glad to have him back. So Gonzaga, to me, Greg, I think with Braden Huff, could potentially be a dark horse Final Four team if they were able to get him back. Without him, I still think they're a second weekend team, but if I think they're going to advance past the Sweet 16, it's because Braden Huff is back, and it's because Braden Huff is playing starter minutes. I don't know if that's going to be the case right now, and that could spell doom for the Zags in the NCAA tournament. St. Mary's playing their best ball of the season right now, winning 8 in a row. It feels like those two are on a collision course. You'd hate to be the team that draws Santa Clara in the semifinal heading into that, because Santa Clara very much in the conversation as a potential bubble team here in the WCC conference. I think if Santa Clara wins that conference tournament, that could cause some chaos for a team on the bubble for sure. Not to say that Santa Clara is undeserving of an NCAA tournament bid, but you're not going to leave Gonzaga out of the tournament. You're not going to leave St. Mary's out of the tournament. WCC could be a 3-bid league if Santa Clara were able to pull this off in Vegas this week. But I still think Gonzaga, I still think St. Mary's are head and shoulders above the rest of the conference, even though they just hold a 1-game lead over Santa Clara for the top 2 spots.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think that it's going to be intriguing to see what we get out of Santa Clara moving forward. Not sure if they're going to be facing off against Pacific or Seattle quite yet at the time of this podcast, but certainly a team that I think has quite a bit of upside, and they've got a lot to play for because they are smack dab on the bubble right now. And honestly, I think the best thing that's happened to Santa Clara is, I'm not sure if you noticed this, but over the last week or two, it feels like everyone is upchucking all over themselves on the bubble, except for the lone undefeated team that everyone wants to try to poke holes through. And even though you've got every other team losing, the one team that doesn't lose apparently has the biggest flaws out there, which I still think is ridiculous. But how do you take a look at some of these teams that are on the bubble? Because it feels like it's a weak bubble. We all want to try to leave out Miami of Ohio while everyone else around them loses.
Yeah, I think Miami of Ohio is absolutely a tournament team. I think if you don't think that, you're just looking for clicks. You're looking for engagement. It's easy to come by these days.
Apparently, I'm looking for engagement by saying that the undefeated team should be in the NCAA tournament, which I find shocking in this day and age.
What else could you ask of Miami of Ohio to do?
What's the point of the regular season if the team that goes undefeated in the regular season isn't in the postseason?
Exactly. You are cheapening everything about the regular season if you ding them for losing between now and the end of the MAC tournament, which, look, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Miami, Ohio is going to finish with an undefeated record come Selection Sunday. I get that Akron is a very tough opponent for them at 26-5, 17-1 in the MAC conference, but this Miami, Ohio team, I mean, they've got something special going on right there. Do I think they're going to make it to the second weekend in the NCAA tournament? Remains to be seen. But I think if you were to rank them as maybe a 6 or a 7 seed on Selection Sunday, I think that's respectable enough. I think that is definitely tipping the cap, saying we think that you are a deserving NCAA tournament team. And if they get the automatic bid, then all these conversations are for nothing. They're absolutely in. But I think Miami, Ohio, even with a loss, you would be so foolish to leave them out of the NCAA tournament, not just because of the resume, but also because of the storyline, because of the viewers. People want to see this Miami, Ohio team do what they could possibly do in the NCAA tournament. You would be denying one of the very best storylines in this tournament, and I think the selection committee would never hear the end of it if they let out a potential one-loss team. They haven't even lost yet. I think Miami of Ohio has to be in the NCAA tournament regardless of if they slip up between now and Selection Sunday.
We are in total agreement on that front. I can tell you right now, it just would be absolutely stunning if they tried to do something stupid like that. Everyone's trying to be like, oh, they didn't play anybody. You play to win the game. And how many teams don't have bad losses? Like TCU's on the bubble, lost at home to New Orleans. So you're able to go down the list there. And Curtis, we are in the final week before we get into the NCAA tournament. And outside those top, we're going to call it 4 teams, Florida, Arizona, Michigan, along with Duke. Is there a team or two that you're taking a look at right now that you feel like is starting to just have some positive momentum and you could see them making a deep run in the tournament?
Yeah, I think right now a team that I'm looking at is one that could make some noise. We talked about them a little while ago, and it was a Virginia Cavaliers team that is 27-4 right now. Their only loss in the last month and a half is to Duke. And prior to that, their only loss was to a North Carolina team. Now, North Carolina losing Wilson the rest of the year, that's going to be tough. But that Virginia Cavaliers team, Greg, I don't know, man. 27-4, that is no joke. If they have a good showing in the ACC tournament, you're looking at them being at least a 3 seed, maybe even a 2 seed if things break their way. That Virginia Cavaliers team, Greg, is one that I think people are sleeping on right now as one that could very much make a lot of noise. And then how about, let's go with the Billikens of St. Louis and Robbie Avila. Look, they lost to, George Mason in their final game of the regular season. Ugly loss, too, losing by 29 to them. Hard to get by that. But you know what? I think just the body of work this season and how they've been able to just make their way through, I think they're a team that could be very dangerous if they are able to get Avila going, if they're able to get a lot of the other guys going on that roster as well, because I think they could play really well if they're able to kind of get past. I know they 3-3 in their last 6, but that 24-1 start, I think that means a lot, and I think this Billikens team can make some noise if they get into the NCAA tournament.
I agree with you. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what we get the next few weeks. And Curtis, I know you're strapped in for the ride, and you're going to be just like myself. When it comes to late March, early April, you're going to be doing both, looking at all this great college basketball action and getting into the start of the baseball season as well. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff going on. Obviously, we're going to be keeping track of all the conference tournaments this week. We've got Big Sky tournament. Who knows? Eastern Washington, they could make some noise as well, get in the NCAA tournament. They've been playing well as of late down the stretch here. Dan Monson, shout out to him. But also, we got the Huskies in the Big Ten tournament, the Cougs in the WCC tournament, Gonzaga in the WCC, Seattle U in the WCC. So all of our eyes and ears and all of the attention that we've got here going to be looking at that this week. Make sure you're following. SeattleSports.com is the place to be. Make sure you're subscribing to our YouTube page. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @KidFromKent. Greg, always a pleasure hopping on this podcast with you, and we're almost here. We're almost to March Madness. It's only a week away, which is crazy to think about after the marathon that this season has been, but it's almost here. I'm so excited for conference tournament time, Greg. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year, and then leading into my favorite month of the year, which is the NCAA tournament. So, Greg, happy to hop on with you, talk some college basketball, and let's do it again some other time. How about it?
Absolutely. Curtis, he does such great work looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So, big thanks to Curtis for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some big shots. Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. It's always great to get Curtis Rogers aboard. He does such great work over at 710 Seattle Sports, looking at this amazing game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So a big thanks to Curtis for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Sunday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_D1. We are going to be going in the Las Vegas rotation order, which is very, very convoluted, which is why I list the order of the games with the description, whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, list goes on, as it's the games that are not involving conference tournaments first, and then it's in order of tip time of the conference tournaments, except for the smaller conferences, which those are at the bottom in order of tip time, so that'll go with the Big Southie and like some Patriot League and Southland. Everything else is bigger conferences, and those go in time order, so yeah, it's very, very convoluted to say the least. That's why I list the order of the games wherever you're listening to this podcast. So let's get things started. 771, 772. It is Penn State. They are going to be on the road facing off against Rutgers. Rutgers, a 4.5 to a 6-point favorite. Total on this game, 150.5, and I do like the under. I semi-total 146. You're just not getting a lot of tempo out of either of these teams. These are two teams that are well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, with Penn State more around 273rd, 266th with Rutgers, and it's a Rutgers team that's not been able to really get it going down low. 242nd in terms of their home 2-point shooting percentage. Now, Penn State is just awful. They're outside the top 340 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, away from home 357th in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but I do think that they're going to be able to do enough to hold in this game, with Freddie De Leon and Kate Mingo combining for about 27.7 points per game. And it is a Penn State team that has been respectable on offense, top 125 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Mingo does give you about 2 steals per game, and Penn State's still a top 125 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Not quite the same away from them, and they've been a top 100 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. Problem is, you only have one guy that gives you over 4 rebounds per game, and Ivan Juric. And on the flip side for Rutgers, they just have not been able to find much outside of Tariq Francis. Francis has done a nice job, give this team 17 points, about 3 assists, shoots 34% from 3. Darren Buchanan shoots 37.5% from 3, 8.5 points per contest, but it is a unit that just has not been able to execute very well on either side of the ball in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Not a lot of teams that shoot 36.5% from 3. That's outside the top 320 in all of college basketball. Rutgers, a top 150 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but they're getting absolutely blasted on the defensive glass. They're outside the top 240 with regards to rebound percentage, though you do have Emmanuel Ogbole, who's got like no body fat whatsoever, 4.5 rebounds per game. If Rutgers needs to cover at the free throw line, they do shoot 73.5% at the charity stripe. That's not too awful, and they are, Rutgers is a top 100 team in terms of taking care of the ball. I think that this is just going to be too low tempoed for the over, so set a total of 146. I like the under, and with Penn State made them a 4-point dog, so we'll take those points. 773, 774. Memphis is going to be on the road against Tulane, and Tulane does find themselves as a home underdog of 1.5 points. 150.5 to 151.5 is the total, and with Tulane, I did set them as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them on the money line. Memphis has just been rough with their offense. They're about 321st in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They are 272nd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, I will say this, Memphis has done a great job guarding the 3-point line. 16th in the country with opponents shooting 29.9% from 3, but it's really not a Tulane team that's looking to go bombs away from 3-point range. With Tulane, right now they are shooting at home less than 30% for 3-point range. And interestingly enough, goes up to 34.6% away from them. Like Tulane overall in terms of points per possession at home is 321st. Overall, they're more in like the 250 range because they average fewer points per possession at home rather than away from home. But that said, you do have a Tulane team that has been able to do a solid job in terms of getting to the free throw line, and they do shoot 75.8% the free throw line. Memphis is aligned the 26th most free throw attempts per field goal attempt in all of college basketball. And for Tulane, they are going to have a little bit of a tough time down low outside the top 340 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but Memphis is one of the worst defensive rebound teams in all of college basketball. That they should be able to offset that, and you've got Rowan Brumbaugh, who I think is the best player out there on the floor. 18 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists, and shoots about 33% from 3 for Tulane. Asher Woods throws in there 12.5 points, along Curtis Williams. Williams is shooting about 34.5% from 3-point range. It's a Tulane team that's been solid in terms of generating turnovers. A top 175 team with this regard. They've been in the top 165 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and then on the flip side for Memphis, they are a top 75 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but just not a lot going on offense. Doug McDaniel, Sincere Parker, they sincerely combined for about 26 points per game between the two of them, shooting about 33% from 3, and both do shoot above 79% at the free throw line. Aaron Bradshaw's been able to give you about 8.5 points per game, but he has been highly suspect all season long. Hassan Abdul-Hakim just never got healthy for this team. Curtis Givens, he's giving you about 9.5 points per game, but again, the turnovers are such a big issue for this Memphis team, along with giving up second and third chances. They're just not doing the little things well, and also outside the top 270 with both their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentages. I like this total under, so I'm at a total of 145.5, and with Tulane, I made them the 1.5 point favorite. I'm taking them on the money line. 775, 776. You've got Charlotte. They are on the road against South Florida, and South Florida does find themselves as a 16.5 point favorite. 152.5 to 153.5 is the total. Made a total of a 153. Personally, between the 152.5 to the 153.5, I'd rather take the 152.5 over, mainly because South Florida just guns it. They are second in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Recognize that Charlotte is a very slow and controlled team, 332nd in terms of total possessions per game, but I think they get enough opportunity opportunities for buckets here. Charlotte, country average team, 174th in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and they should be able to pick off a South Florida team that is allowing teams at home to shoot about 34.9% for three against them. That's outside the top 260 in all of college basketball. Charlotte, top 100 team with their three-point shooting percentage, top 125 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage with Anton Bonke, who comes over from Providence, supplying about 11 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three. Zane Mingo is able to shoot 37% from three. He's up to 12 points, 4.5 assists per contest. The ancillary guys like Damani Harrison, Arden Coyers, these two guys, they combine shoot about 39% from three-point range. They're combining for about 17 points per game, and then on the flip side of things, you do have a bunch that has been very just up and down in general with regards to their offense, but for South Florida, one thing that is consistent for them is grabbing second and third chances. Top 25 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage with Isaiah Nelson leading that charge, 16 points, 9.9 rebounds per game. Wes Enos, he shoots about 36.5% per three, and he's on the top scorer on the team with 16.4 points per game. Joshua Majafo really doesn't bomb from three, but he gives you 12 points, 5 boards, so he does a little bit of this and that, while Joseph Pignon shoots 37.5% from three. South Florida, they lead the country in terms of free throw attempts per game, shoot about 74.5% at the free throw line. For South Florida, for as good as they are on the offensive glass, they are outside the top 150 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so they do allow second and third chances. With Charlotte being a solid three-point shooting team, I think that that's enough for them to hold in this game. Semi-line at 13, so we'll take the points with South Florida and the over. Semi-total 153, so in on that 152.5 to the over. 777, 778. Tempo, we give our road to Lane Kiffin Go Owls. It's on the road against Tulsa, and Tulsa's an 11 to 11.5 point favorite. 152.5 to 153.5 is the total line with Tulsa. I did set them as a favorite of 13 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Temple is a very slow and controlled team. They're about 307th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and it's a bunch that has been shooting 37% from three-point range at home, but that goes down to a hearty 30.9% away from them. It's a team that just doesn't really give themselves second and third chances. To their credit, top 25 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but also a Temple team that away from home, they allow teams to shoot over 35.2% from three. They just have not been the same team away from home. Meanwhile, it is a Tulsa group that at home, they do allow opponents to shoot 35.5% from three-point range, but Tulsa is also a top 35 team in terms of overall rebound percentage. They're a top 10 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they're a top 10 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, so they've got a lot going for them in that regard. Your top scorer, David Green, has been incredible with 16.5 points, 4.5 boards, and he shoots 40% for three. Miles Barnstable, 42% three-point shooter, 90% the free throw line, 15 points per game. Tylen Riley, 40% from three-point range, 14.5 points, 4.5 assists per game. So many guys that contribute to the cause, and they're good on the glass because you have a few guys that don't necessarily score a lot. Ian Michael, he gives you 3.2 points, but he gives you 4 boards per contest. Heather Burrand, he gives you about 4.5 boards, pair of assists with about 6 points per game, and then Temple just really doesn't have a lot of size. Gavin Griffiths has been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, and he contributes to the cause right around 10.5 points per game. One guy at the roster that gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game, Darian Bill Fortuff, 18 points, 4.5 boards, and he's been able to shoot 37% from three-point range. And to the credit of Temple, they're a top 60 team in terms of getting to the free throw line. They shoot 74% at the charity stripe, but they're also outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well. Do think that you get a pretty efficient game on offense, even though it's going to be a little bit slowed down. I did set my total here, once again, at a 153, so between a 152.5 to a 153.5. Personally, I actually like the 153.5 under here, just because of the lower amount of possessions in this game, so I like the under, and with Tulsa, willing to lay up to 12.5 with them. 779, 780 on the card. You've got Maryland playing against Illinois. Illinois a 14.5 to a 15.5 point favor. 145.5 to 146.5 is the total, and with Maryland, I did set them as an underdog of 16.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay with Illinois. It's an Illinois team that isn't really playing fast. They're about 291st in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but boy, oh boy, are they efficient. Number 1 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You have a Maryland group that has just been lackadaisical on defense, 313th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they are really giving it up from three. They're allowing teams to shoot 37.2% from three-point range. That is a bottom 25 mark in the country, and then you compound that with the fact that Illinois has been so good on the glass. They are a top 15 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. It's an Illinois team that down low with regards to their two-point shooting percentage. They're a top 30 team with that respect as well, and Maryland, they are not executing down low. They are outside the top 300 with their two-point shooting percentage. Maryland outside the top 260 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and right now the lone thing that that they've got going for them is that Solomon Washington has come off of injury with 10.5 points, 9.5 rebounds per game. You do have Darius Adams, 10.5 points per contest as a freshman, but hasn't necessarily developed the way that the team was hoping. Shoots less than 25% from three. David Q at 13.5 points per contest, but for Maryland, just all sorts of bad here. They're also outside the top 265 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and on the flip side of things, for Illinois, you've got Kylan Boswell back, who maybe isn't that three-point shooting dynamo, but he helps out set up guys like Keaton Wagler has been able to give you 18 points, shoots 42% from three. Davi Mirkovic has been able to shoot 38% from three, 13 points per game. Tomislav Ivicic is nowhere near as good as he was a season ago, and yet this team is still rock solid. He and his brother in Big Z have been able to combine for about 17 points, 10.5 rebounds per game. The one thing Illinois is not going to do is they're not going to generate turnovers. They are dead last in the country in terms of turnovers generated per game, but they're also a top 15 team in terms of taking care of the ball, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. I do think that even though it's going to be a relatively slow game, I think that Illinois just picks apart this really inefficient defense. So I'm willing to lay up to 16 here with Illinois, and I do like the over semi-total 150.5, 781, 782. Eastern Illinois is going to be on the road against UAB, and the Blazers of UAB do find themselves as a 10.5 point favorite. Total on scheme 147.5 to 148.5, and with UAB, I did set them as a favorite of 10.5 points. So right now at 11 plus, that does become my buy point on East Carolina. UAB doing an amazing job taking care of the ball. Top 10 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and East Carolina is just not shooting well in general. 318th in the country in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. In terms of their 3-point shooting percentage, that is a bottom 30 mark in the country, as they are shooting less than 30% as a collective. That said, it is a bunch that has been able to do a pretty solid job on the glass. You've got Jordan Riley, who gives you 24 points, 6 boards, 2.5 assists, 2 steals, shoots out 32% from three. And Dimitri Gardner, who was out for the first 13 games of the season, has actually shot 40% from three. One guy in the roster that shoots over 32.2% from three, but he breathes a little bit of life into the team. East Carolina has been outside the top 240 in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but it's not like UAB is knocking down threes either. And UAB, a top 30 team in terms of percentage of their field goal attempts that come from inside the arc. UAB, they shoot 28.3% for three. They're a bottom 10 team in the country with this regard, so both of these teams are awful from three-point range. UAB, they've been very solid on the glass. Top 45 team in terms of rebound percentage. Chance Westery, 15.5 points, 5 assists per contest. Jacob Meyer, 12.5 points, 4 boards, and then Daniel Rivera, along with Kyron Lindsey. They combine for 13 rebounds per game between the two of them. You are getting about 22 points per game. If UAB needs to cover at the free throw line, they do shoot just 70.7% at the free throw line, and they've been about a country average team in terms of generating turnovers. And on defense, they guard the three well. They're aligned teams who shoot less than 32% from the outside. They're more of a country average team with their interior defense, and I think that that's just enough for East Carolina to be able to hold in there. Both of these teams are looking to play at a pretty brisk pace as well, with East Carolina 106th in terms of total possessions per game, UAB 60th, but I just don't know if the offensive execution is quite there to be able to get you over, but I think that late fouls can do just enough. I set my total at a 148.5, so right now seeing a 147.5, that's my pretty much max buy point on the over, and with East Carolina willing to take 11 plus with them. 783, 784, UTSA, meet the Roadrunners are on the road against Rice. We give our road to Lane Kiffin, go Owls, as Rice, the Owls are an 11.5 to a 12-point favorite. So this game 150.5, and instead of 12, 151.5. I do like the over. Have a Rice team that's a relatively mid-tempo in terms of total possessions per game, 194th. UTSA has been playing at a pretty fast tempo, 120th in terms of total possessions per game, and I really don't know what UTSA is doing well right now, as they are a bottom 10 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Ironically enough, they're actually scoring more points per possession away from home rather than at home, and they are 351st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, Rice is not executing down low. They are outside the top 30 with their 2-point shooting percentage, top 85 team with their 3-point shooting percentage, but against UTSA, they should be able to find some holes. UTSA is 261st in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. They are absolutely abysmal on the glass. They're a bottom 15 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, as they're lying in games played away from home. Teams to grab over 37.5% of their misses as an offensive rebound, and Rice has been a top 75 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Now for UTSA, you do have Jameer Simpson, who's been solid, 16 points, 4 boards, and he throws in there a steal per contest. Nobody else on the roster gives you double figures. Austin Nunez, Brent Moss, they combine for about 19 points per game. And Moss shoots 33% from three. Dorian Hayes shoots 34% from three. And those are your top 3-point shooters. Like, you've got nothing on this team from the outside. You don't have a ton on the inside either. Just a sad, reckless bunch of guys. And then on the flip side, for Rice, you've been able to get some relatively good production here out of the backcourt in Trey Borneau and Nick Anderson. These two guys combine for 31 points, 9.5 boards. And from 3-point, you got Anderson shooting 30%. 39% for three. Jalen Smith also shoots 39% from the outside. Rice is a suspect free throw shooting team at 69%, and UTSA going to put you on the free throw line, but the turnover issues that they've been dealing with all season long, 12.5 turnovers per game, I think that those are going to be alleviated in this game. It's a Rice team that's been okay with their shooting percentages on defense. Top 185 team with regards to opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but I think they pick apart a UTSA team that's just been absolutely awful on defense, and both of these teams should be getting a lot of second and third chances on the glass to do just enough to be able to get you over. So somebody told 151.5. I like the over, with Rice made them an 11.5 point favorite. 12 does become my bare bones minimum buy point here on UTSA to go along with that total over. 785, 786. Michigan is going to be playing OC Michigan State. Michigan State underdogs of 10.5 to 11.5 points. So on this game, 148.5 to 115.5, and I like the under. I set my total at a 146.5. It's a tempo war in this game. As for Michigan State, 280th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Michigan is 30th, and Michigan is doing a great job down low. In terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, top 10 mark in the country. Second in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage. As a matter of fact, in their home game specifically, number 1 in the country. But you do now have a Michigan State team that has been a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home, and in games played away from home. They are allowing their opponents to grab just 18.6% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is number 1 in all of college basketball. Jeremy Fears has no fears with this Michigan State team. 15.5 points, 9 rebounds per game, and it is a Michigan State team that has had a few issues with regards to turnovers. They're just outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. That's the one thing that this Michigan defense really doesn't do. They're not going to generate a whole bunch of turnovers. They're just going to dominate you down low, but Michigan State has the guys to be able to match up there. Jackson Kaler has been able to give you 12.5 points, 9 rebounds per game. Carson Cooper, 10.5 points, 7.5 boards, and with Kurt Tang, he's been a 38% 3-point shooter, as Michigan State continues to have just some of the most wackadoo home and road splits with regards to their 3-point shooting, as right now for Michigan State, they entered into the week shooting about 32.7% from 3-point range at home, 39.2% away from home. And to look right at Michigan, they've been shooting it much better from 3 here recently. They are shooting 36.2% from 3. You have to wonder if that LJ Kaysen injury is going to slow that down a little bit. He was about an 8.5 point per game guy that helped out the backcourt. You still do have, though, Elliot Kadu, who's been able to do a nice job supplying the team with 10 points, 5.5 assists. He shoots 38% from 3. Morris Johnson, Yexel Lendeborg, and Ade Mara. They all give you at least 6.9 rebounds per game apiece. Mara, 2.5 blocks per game. Johnson shoots 43% from 3 with about 13.5 points per game, and then Lindeborg, your main scorer, 1.2 steals, 1.4 blocks, 14.5 points per game. So he does a little bit of everything for this team. But I do think that Michigan State, with that defense and that slow style, does enough for them to be able to hold in this game. Set my line at 8.5, so we'll take the double figures here with Michigan State. And I like the under. I did set my total here at a 146.5, 787, 788. Iowa's on the road against Nebraska. Nebraska does find themselves as a favorite of between 5.5 to 6.5 points. Totals between 133.5 to 134.5, and I made my line 6.5, so we'll lay up to 6 here with Nebraska. It's a Nebraska team that sort of dares you to shoot from 3. They're a top 30 team in terms of percentage of their own field goal attempts that come from 3-point range, and a top 10 team in terms of forcing opponents to be able to take shots from 3. It's an Iowa group that they are very comfortable with their perimeter play. They're a top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they shoot 35.2% from 3. That's 110th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, it's a Nebraska group that they have been able to shoot about 35.3% from 3. That's 104th in the country, but Iowa, the name of the game for them is generating turnovers. They've been a top 15 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and if they don't do so, you can really unearth their one weakness. This is an Iowa team that does give up quite a few good looks down low. They're just 249th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and while Nebraska takes a lot of shots from 3-point range, they have been a very good team down low, with Rink Mass being able to lead that charge, as he right now supplies the team with 13.5 points, 6 boards, 3 assists as a 6'9" versatile big. You've got Jamarcus Lawrence, who's able to give you about 10 points per contest. Braden Frager's come off the bench for about 12 points, 4 boards, as Nebraska, top 30 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. Nebraska's not pulling in their second and third chances. This team is outside the top 300 with regards to percentage of the missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Iowa's not giving themselves a ton of second and third chances as well, and with Iowa, they really generate those turnovers. But for Nebraska, top 40 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and then you've got Price Sanford shooting 40% from 3 with about 18 points, 5 rebounds per game. On the flip side for Iowa, you've got Bennett Sturts, who's the top scorer in this game, 20.5 points, shoots 85% the free throw line, 38.5% from 3-point range, and then Tavion Banks has been a nice number 2, 42.5% 3-point shooter, about 10.5 points per game. Iowa's just doing the little things well. They're a top 30 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and They shoot 77.8% at the free throw line. That's a top 25 mark in the country. But again, they're not going to pull in there a lot of second and third chances. It is an Iowa team that they are also outside the top 150 now in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. In conference play, they've been a line team to shoot 35.5% from three, with Nebraska very content to be taking threes. I think Nebraska does just enough to get the job done at home. Somebody told 134.5, so 134 less in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 6 here with Nebraska. 789, 790 on the card. Now we go to these conference tournament games. This is Northern Iowa and Illinois, Chicago. This is the Missouri Valley Conference Final. Right now, this is a game without numbers, but I'm seeing an additional Northern Iowa minus 2.5 and a total of 124.5. If that is the opener that we actually do get, I'd be willing to lay with Northern Iowa. I did set them as a 3-point favorite, and then I made my total a 125, so 124.5 or less. I'm going to be in on the total over. Have to keep in mind that this is going to be game number 3 in 3 days for these teams, and this is an early tip time as well. Northern Iowa to start with, they are 361st in terms of total possessions per game. Illinois, Chicago, more of a mid-tempo team, 199th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Illinois, Chicago will allow second and third chances outside the top 275 with regards to defensive rebound percentage, but they've excelled in grabbing second and third chances as they're a top 30 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Illinois, Chicago not going to knock your socks off with their three-point shooting. They shoot 32% from three. That's about 287th in the country. So has been a team that has been looking more to their interior play and to be able to knock down shots from the inside. Meanwhile, you do have a Northern Iowa team that has been very good in terms of not allowing second and third chances. They're a top 30 team in games played away from home in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They're allowing nothing from three-point range. They continue to be a top 10 team in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Now, neither of these teams are amazing at the free throw line, especially Northern Iowa at 70%, but they also don't get to the free throw line often, so that actually doesn't hurt them too much. You got Trey Campbell is giving you 13.5 points, shoots 32% from three. Leon Bond is a 36% three-point shooter with about 5 boards, 11.5 points per game. Then the mixers and shakers like Max Weisbrod, Ben Schwieger, they all just know their role on the team. Meanwhile, for Illinois, Chicago, they've been able to do a solid job in terms of getting back one of their main guys in Elijah Crawford, who was missing for quite a few games this season. He's become their main man with about 13.5 points, 4.5 assists per game. Ahmad Henderson, Andy Johnson, they combine for 24 points per game. And Illinois, Chicago is a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they also don't take care of the ball. They're outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Northern Iowa neither here nor there in terms of generating turnovers, but with Illinois, Chicago also being just a hair outside the top 200 with their 2-point shooting percentage, I do think that leads to a slog of a game, and I think that Northern Iowa gets this game at their tenor, and I think that they get the job done. I set my line at a 3, so we'll lay 2.5 and not a hair more with Northern Iowa, and at a 124.5 or less in on the over semi-total at a 125. 791, 782. Campbell is going to be taking on UNC Wilmington. This is out there in Washington, D.C., and for UNC Wilmington, they are a 6.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 150.5. I set my line at 7.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with UNC Wilmington. I'm just not a believer in this Campbell team, as Campbell has not been able to execute on the inside, outside the top 250 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage. In terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, they are 298th, and they have to face off against a UNC Wilmington team that has been really good on the glass, 22nd in the country in terms of overall rebound percentage. Now, Wilmington is outside the top 200 with their own 2-point shooting percentage as well, but they do a significantly better job in terms of giving themselves second and third chances. That even with having Davidias Buka along with Chris Fields on the flip side for Campbell, give you a combined 16 rebounds per game. DJ Turner-Smith has been able to give that Campbell team right around about 19.5 points per game. Jeremiah Johnson throws in there a double-figure amount of points, 4+ assists per game, but with this Wilmington team, they're just a great defense. They play super slow. They're 316th in terms of total possessions per game, 44th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're not going to generate a lot of turnovers, and turnovers have been costly for Campbell this year, but Nolan Hodge, 14.5 points, shoots 40% from three. Patrick Wessler, 7-footer that comes in from the ACC, 13.5 points, 9.5 rebounds, a block per contest. Madison Durr has been able to throw in there about 10 points per game. Just have so many good pieces there, with this team also being a top 15 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, 11th at 29.5%. I think that it allows them to dominate this game against a Campbell team that's looking to play fast, but they're not necessarily warp speed fast, but 131st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So I do like the under. I set my line at a 146.5 with regards to total, and with Wilmington, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 7 with them. 783, 794. You've got Drexel, and they're going to be playing against Monmouth. Monmouth, a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. Total on this game, 138.5 to 139. I like the under. I set my total at 134. Neither of these teams are looking to play up tempo. Drexel's outside the top 330 in terms of total possessions, ranked 337th. Meanwhile, Monmouth is 234th, and Monmouth has had struggles on the inside. They are 307th with their own 2-point shooting percentage. Drexel's right around about 275th, though, and Monmouth has been solid with their defense. In games played away from from home. Teams shoot just 46.6% on their 2-point shots. That's actually a top 20 mark in the country, and they're also a top 30 team in terms of shot block percentage. Doc Mortar really doesn't give you a lot of points. Like, he gives you fewer than 5 rebounds as well, but he throws in there a block and a half per contest. You've got Jason Rivera-Torres being able to give you just a little bit of everything, 15 points, pair of steals per game, and now they've got K'Vion McClain back. He missed the first 23 games of the season. He's been giving the team 17.5 points in the games that he's actually played. That gives them a shot in the arm. On offense, shoots 37.5% from 3, and as a whole, the team is shooting about 35% from 3. That's a top 110 mark in all of college basketball. You've got a nice go-to point guard in Jack Collins, 7.5 points, 4.8 boards, 4.7 assists per contest, and for Monmouth, they have also been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Drexel's had difficulties in terms of doing the little things. Their free throw shooting percentage is 66%. That's a bottom 15 mark in the country. They're outside the top 290 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and only one double-figure score. Shane Blakeney, 14.5 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists, does shoot 36.5% from 3, and Drexel does shoot 34.5% from 3. That's a relatively country average mark. They've not allowing good opportunities either inside or outside. They're a top 75 group in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Not going to put you under duress, though. They are outside the top 235 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and for a Drexel team that typically prides themselves on good rebounding, and they've grabbed quite a few second and third chances, they are just 167th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. You've got Garfield Turner down for Wood, who's been able to give you about 5.2 rebounds per game. One guy on the roster gives you over 5 boards per contest, so do think that Monmouth goes out there, finds a way to be able to get the job done. I did set them as a 4-point favorite, so going to be one to lay the number, and I do like the under. I saw my total at a 134, 785, 796. Towson and Charleston do battle out there in the Coastal Conference Tournament. Right now, this game has no numbers, but I've got my handicap. Made Charleston a 4.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 with them, 5 or more. I'm willing to take the points with Towson, and then made a total of a 135.5. So 135 or less, I like the over. 136 or higher, the under. It's a Charleston group that it's really been a hodgepodge for them this season because they've dealt with so many injuries, but they have been able to find their form in terms of being able to just execute on the inside, because this is a team that has shot it terribly from 3-point range, 30.2%. That is outside the top 330 in all of college basketball. Guess who's worse? Towson, bottom 10 team in the country with regards to their own 3-point shooting percentage. Now, Towson has been pretty solid with their defense, 71st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That said, in games played away from home, they are giving up about 15.8 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. So you've got big giant issues there. And for Charleston, neither here nor there with regards to their defense. 117th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You do have Tyler Tejada on the side of Towson, who's been able to give you 17 plus points per contest, and then Dylan Williamson has been a really nice number 2 with about 14.5 points per game. Tejada also throws in there 5.5 rebounds per game, and this has been a Towson group that has been great on the offensive glass. They're a top 30 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebounding. Charleston, neither here nor there with regards to their overall rebounding, as Charleston will give themselves some second and third chances. They do rank in the top 210 with regards to offensive rebound percentage, but that said, I do think that they're just going to be able to do a good job with their shot blocking to be able to get the job done outright on the money line. And also, if this is a tight game, Towson, they do shoot at the free throw line 68.6%, right around about 300th in the country. That's a little bit of a fear that you have to have here with them as well. Charleston, not necessarily that they're amazing, but 73.5%, that's more around about country average. And you've had Jalen Counter be very versatile with about 5 boards, 16 points, 5.5 assists per game. Shoots 34% from 3, which that's really good for this team. You really don't have any of your other top 5 scorers shooting above 30.5% from 3, but Martin Kalu has been able to give you about 9 points, 4 boards. He throws in there a steal per game, and then Chalma Cho has been able to throw in there about 2.5 blocks per contest as well. He gives you about 9 points per game. So I do think that in this circumstance, you're going to have Charleston be able to go out there, get the job done outright on the money line. And I do think that it's going to be a lower tempo game because this is a Towson team that, in terms of total possessions per game, they're about 359. So I'm willing to lay up to 4 here with Charleston, 5 or more. Take the points with Towson, and then 135 or less. I like the over. 136 or higher, the under. 797, 798. America's favorite tag team. You don't just get William. You don't just get Mary. You get both. They're playing against Hofstra. My handicap is Hofstra being a 3-point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 2.5 with them. 3.5 or more. Taking the points with William and Marion. Set a total of a 159. So 158.5 or less. And on the over, 159.5 or higher. The under, you've got a Hofstra group that has been able to do a really good job with their interior defense. They're a top 15 team in the country with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they grab second and third chances. Hofstra is 61st in the country in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. William and Mary is outside the top 260 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, and William and Mary is a hair outside outside the top 200 with their three-point shooting percentage, and they do rely upon being able to excel on the inside. William & Mary is 16th in the country with their two-point shooting percentage, so that takes a lot out of what they do really well. Now, this has been a Hofstra team that has had a few fumbles with regards to their ball security outside the top 125 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, as William & Mary is looking to gun it. 15th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and a top 45 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis away from home. Hofstra's looking to slow it down. 305th in terms of total possessions per game, and Hofstra has the top scorer in this game. Cruz Davis, 20.5 points, 4.5 assists. He shoots 40% for three, but Preston Eadman shoots 39% for three, 15.5 points per game. Then a lot of mixers and shakers for there, like German Plotnov has stepped up in a few big spots. 9 points, shoots 36.5% from three. You don't get a lot of scoring out of him, but Victory Otinu has been able to give you about 7 boards and a block per contest. Silas Sunday, he gives you a little bit over a block per game as well. And then on the William & Mary side of things, it's very much a whole is greater than some of its parts approach. You do have Chase Lowe as sort of your main point guard, 9.5 points, 6 boards, 3.5 assists per game. And then you've got Kellyan Brinkenoff along with Reese Miller and Tonde Valley Fasasi, your top 3 scorers, all between 11.1 and 12.3 points per game, and they all give you between 2.2 and 2.6 assists per contest, so they've been able to do a solid job on that side of things. And William & Mary is a top 110 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so they've held up there, but with how strong Hofstra is on the inside and also having Cruz Davis, I do think that they should be a bit of a favorite here. Made Hofstra a 3-point favorite, so willing to lay up to 2.5 with them, 3.5 or more taking the points with William & Mary, 158.5 or less, and on the over 159.5 or higher, the under 799, 800. You got UW Green Bay, and they're going to be playing against Northern Kentucky. This is for the Horizon League tournament out there in Indianapolis, and right now for Green Bay, they're 2.5-point underdogs. Total on this game is 145.5. I did set my total 148.5. I do like the over. You've got a Northern Kentucky team that's looking to play up tempo, and a UW Green Bay team that doesn't play with any pace whatsoever. Northern Kentucky, 64th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Green Bay is 341st, but Green Bay has been ghastly on defense, 327th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I will say it's a Green Bay team that on offense are 60th in the country in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. Northern Kentucky, they're 45th, and Northern Kentucky, that ascends to the top 35 when they're away from home. And with Northern Kentucky, they do a really good job in terms of generating turnovers. This team in games played away from home, top 25 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Green Bay, they have been a top 100 team in terms of taking care of the ball and are 85th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Northern Kentucky, they're right there at 95th, but I do think that the overall firepower with Northern Kentucky being able to generate those turnovers, and additionally with Northern Kentucky, I just feel like they're stronger on the inside. That allows them to get the job done, as UW Green Bay is not doing the little things well. They're outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they don't really fight for second and third chances on the offensive glass. You've got Donovan Ode for Northern Kentucky, give you 18.5 points. He only shoots about 32% from three, but Khalil Robinson, Dan Grazinger, they combined shoot 37% from three. These two guys have been able to combine for just under 30 points per game. LJ Wells, 14.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. Tate Dozier has been able to give you about 5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest. A little bit of rough and tumble there. And then for Green Bay, you've had Marcus Hall really be the do-it-all sort of guy for the team, as Hall is right now your number 2/number 3 scorer at about 14 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. CJ O'Hara, Justin Allen, they both give you between 13.5 to 14 points per game. They combine for about 8 rebounds per game. And getting back to Hall, he does shoot 40% from 3-point. And Green Bay as a whole shoots 36.5% from the outside. Northern Kentucky has been outside the top 275 with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. So is this Green Bay team. So even though it's not going to be a fast game, I think that it's going to be a very efficient game where this Green Bay team does not put you under any sort of duress whatsoever, and I do think that Northern Kentucky, with those clean possessions, find a way to get the job done. Set my line at 4.5, we'll lay up to 4 with Northern Kentucky, and like the over, I set my total at a 148.5. 801, 802 on the card. It is Western Carolina facing off against East Tennessee State. No numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap as with ETSU. I did set them as a mid-tier favor here of 7 points. I'm willing to lay up to 6.5 with them, 7.5 or more taking the points with Western Carolina, and then set a total to where a 144.5 or less, in on the over 145.5 or higher, the under. Have a Western Carolina team that to start the year was playing very up-tempo. They've been slowing things down as the season has went along, about 138th in the country now in terms of total possessions frame. East Tennessee always a relatively slow tempo team, and games played away from home outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions frame. Very efficient though. Overall 58th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and games played away from home that ascends into the top 35. As for East Tennessee, they've been shooting about 35% from 3-point away from home. That's a top 100 mark in the country, but they really make their hay down low. It's a team that doesn't allow a lot of second and third chances. Top 40 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and that's where the bread is buttered for Western Carolina. They're a top 75 team in terms of overall rebound percentage, both on the offensive and defensive side of things, so they've been rock solid there. But You've got Brian Taylor, who's been able to give this East Tennessee team 14.5 points, 3 assists. He shoots 35% from 3. Blake Barkley has been a 36% three-point shooter, and both of these guys do shoot nearly 80% of the free throw line. If ETSU is in a spot where they need to cover late in the game, they do shoot 76% of the free throw line, and they value the ball. This is a top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis for Western Carolina. They've been better in terms of taking care of the ball recently, but they are still outside the top 175 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. On defense, ETSU, top 85 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And then you've got the ultimate kryptonite for this Western Carolina team. They are awful at guarding the three-point line. They're allowing teams to shoot 36.7%. That is 333rd in all of college basketball. Now, you do have to like what Marcus Kell along Cord Stansbury have brought to the table. These two guys combined for about 27.5 points per game, but neither shoots above 31% from 3. Julian Sawarmo, though, has been able to give you 12 points. He does shoot 40% from 3. Tylon Petaway has been able to throw in there about 40.5% three-point shooting as well. And Tosh Jamoski, who comes over from Southern, he's been able to give this team a little bit more direction to help cut down on the turnovers just a skoge. But still, I do think that ETSU going to be able to find a way to be able to get the job done here. Willing to lay up to 6.5 with them. 7.5 for more. Taking the points with Western Carolina. 144.5 for less, and on the over, 145.5 for higher. The under 803, 804. UNC Greensboro is going to be playing against Furman, and Furman does find themselves as a 6.5 point favorite total on this game. It is 148.5, and I did set my total here at a 153.5. I do like the over. You've got a Furman team that in games played away from home, they have been numero uno in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. Have a Greensboro team that's been pretty solid with their 3-point shooting. For UNC Greensboro, this team from 3-point range is shooting right around about 35.8%. That is the top 75 mark in the country. And for Furman, they've been a pretty solid defensive team, not necessarily amazing. It's not a team that's going to put you under too much duress, but it is a Furman team that has been a top 100 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Greensboro has been shameful on defense. They're 353rd in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They've been outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and not going to be a lot of turnovers generated by them, which is big because Furman's biggest kryptonite is being outside the top 250 with regards to ball security. This Greensboro team 341st in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Furman is 347th. So even though neither team super duper guns it, Furman especially 267th in terms of total possessions per game. Greensboro, they're more of a mid-tempo team. They're about 155th in terms of total possessions per game. You're going to be able to get clean possessions, and for Furman, they have been able to get quite a bit of production in the backcourt out of the freshman and Alex Wilkins, 17.5 points, right around about 5 assists per game. Doesn't necessarily bomb it well from 3, and Furman as a whole, they're outside the top 275 with their 3-point shooting percentage, and if they are in a pressure spot, they do shoot 67.4% at the free throw line, but still, they make them the 7.5 point favorite because I do think that their overall just efficiency down low is going to be able to carry the day, and they have been a team that has been in the top 150 with regards to rebound percent. Charles Johnson, 10.9 rebounds per game. Ben Vanderwall has been able to throw in there about 6 boards. They were dealing with the injury to Cooper Bowser. He's back, 14 points, 5.5 to 6 rebounds per game out of him. And then for UNC Greensboro, you've got an over 50% 3-point shooter in Lillian Marvel, who's been able to give you 9.5 points per contest. Justin Neely, double-double machine, 17.5 points. 11.5 rebounds per game, but hasn't translated to great interior defense for this team. Now, Greensboro, not the world's worst team in terms of the defensive glass, but at the same time, they're just giving up the first shot. And for UNC Greensboro, you've been able to have KJ Younger, Donald Whitehead Jr. be able to combine for about 26 points per game in the backcourt, but the lack of putting you under duress, the clean possessions for Furman, I think wins out here. So I'm willing to lay up to 7 with Furman, and I do like the over. I set my total 153.5. 805, 806. It's Marist and Merrimack doing battle out there from Boardwalk Hall. No numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. I said Marist as a favorite here of 1 point. So pretty much them as an underdog. I'm going to be willing to take them on the money line. If I'm getting points with Merrimack, I'll take the points. I set a total to where 124.5 or less, in on the over, 125.5 or higher. The under, I'm thinking that Merrimack is going to be the favorite here, but because they have been a rock solid defense. Really, both of these defenses have been so tremendous. The reason why I did set Marist as a favorite, though, is that this Merrimack team, they just have one fatal flaw. It's on the glass. They're 362nd in the country in terms of rebound percentage. Not saying Marist is like monsters of the Midway or anything like that, but they're more around 146th with regards to their overall rebound percentage, all while being a top 10 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And let's say that you have to go to the free throw line. Both of these teams are actually very amazing at the free throw line. and Merrimack did just pass up Marist for a better free throw shooting percentage. Marist 78.3%, 78.9% out of Merrimack. You have no qualms with either of these teams, but so with Marist, I do think that they do just a little bit of a better job here. They've been able to take care of the ball relatively well on offense. Both teams are generating quite a few turnovers. Both of these teams, top 50 teams in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but you also do have a Merrimack team that's just not finishing down low. They're outside the top 275 with their 2-point shooting percentage. They only shoot about 33% from 3. KVR Kennedy, Ernest Shelton both shoot 35% from 3. These two guys combine for about 34.6 points per game, with Kennedy, he throws in there 4 assists per contest, and then Casey Ugakazi has been able to give you a pair of blocks. As Merrimack is actually a top 20 team in terms of shot block percentage. I think that would surprise a lot of people, but I do think that for Marist, they're going to be able to have just such a nice edge on the glass, as you've been able to get right around 5.5 boards, 5.5 points per game out of Jaden Daughtry, and then you've got a pair of guys in Jaden Collins, Elijah Lewis. They've been able to climb for about 18.5 points, both give you between 4 to 5 rebounds per game. Lewis was dealing with a little bit of injury. He's probably going to be out of the fold once again in this game. They're going to hope and pray that he's able to make it out there, but even without him, they've been just fine with having someone like a Jason Schofield be able to step up. He's able to give you 4+ boards, just under a block per game. And then Rajon Blackwell has been a nice off-the-bench scorer with about 12 points, 4 boards. He shoots about 34% from 3, and with Marist, they're not giving you good looks from the inside or the outside. They're a top 50 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, top 10 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and with Merrimack not having ton down low, had to set Marist as a very slim favorite. I'm going to be willing to take Marist as a money line underdog / laying up to a point. If you're getting more than a point with Merrimack, going to be looking to them, and then set a total to where 124.5 or less, in on the over, 125.5 or higher, the under. 807-808. Fairfield is going to be playing against Siena. This is another game without numbers, but I've got my handicap. I did set Siena as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 3 with them. 4 more taking the points with Fairfield, and then made a total to where a 135 or less. I like the over. 136 or higher, the under. You've got a Siena team that in games played away from home has been in the top 40 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. It's a very slow team, as Siena in terms of total possessions per game out of 365 teams, they're 356 in the country, but man, these guys have come to play when they've been away from home. They're a top 100 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a roadside shoot score venue. Meanwhile, you do have a Fairfield group that they're more around about 123rd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Fairfield, not necessarily the greatest shooting team, as for Fairfield, they're well outside the top 250 with their 2-point shooting percentage, but they are doing the little things oh so well. For Fairfield, they're a top 110 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they're a top 35 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage of their missed shots that do become an offensive rebound. Fairfield also not a team that's going to be looking to just bust it up and down the court in terms of total possessions per game. They're checking in 257th in the country, and they do have a nice go-to scorer, as Braden Sparks, 17.5 points, 2.5 assists per contest. He shoots 40% from 3. Brandon Benjamin, Declan Wolfinger, they combine for about 18.8 rebounds and 26.5 points per game. And then Deuce Turner down for what? It's been a nice mixer and shaker with about 8.5 points per game. But for Siena, I love what Gavin Doty has been able to bring to the table, as he's up to 17.5 points, 7 boards. Not necessarily a great 3-point shooter at 32.5%, better than the team average at 30%. As Siena, they overall for the season are a bottom 30 team with their 3-point shooting percentage, but they make up for it for what they're able to do down low. And for Siena, in a pressure spot, they shoot 76.2% of the free throw line. That is a top 50 mark in the country. Justice Schultz in the backcourt is able to give you 4.5 assists per game. And though Siena has had a little bit of a rough go of it in terms of just their overall 3-point shooting, they do a great job in terms of taking care of the ball as well to be able to just maximize these possessions. They're a top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. For Siena as well, they've been able to operate very well on the inside. In games played away from home with their 2-point shooting percentage, they are a top 70 team in the country. I think that that's going to be just enough to be able to win out here. So one to lay up to 3 with Siena, 4 or more, taking the points with Fairfield, and then set a total to where a 135 or less, in on the over, 136 or higher, the under. 809-810, it's Southern Miss and Troy. They're going to be doing battle from Pensacola, Florida for the Sun Belt tournament. No numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap, as I did set Southern Miss as a underdog of 5.5 points. Willing to lay up to 5 with Troy, 6 or more, take the points from Southern Miss, and then 145 or less, in on the over, 146 or higher, the under. You've got a Troy team that is looking to play at a pretty good tempo, 114th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They've been slowing down, though, as the season has went along. Southern Miss are right there, 125th in terms of total possessions per game. Southern Miss is going to be looking to pile drive the ball down low, but they're just not an efficient team in general with their offense. 200th in terms of 2-point shooting percentage. Now, shout out to them, because at that does go into the top 100 when they're away from home, and they've been a top 125 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They're also shooting less than 30.5% from three-point range, and this is a Troy team that has been excellent in terms of giving themselves second and third chances in games played away from home. They do find themselves in the top 50 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and for Southern Miss, you just are very reliant upon Talik Weeks to be able to get everything going, as he's been able to supply the team with 19.5 points, 5.5 boards per game. I have to wonder if Southern Miss is just starting to get a little bit tired as well. This is going to be game number 4 in 4 days. That's just the way that the Sun Belt tournament works. You've got Isaac Tavares, who's been able to supply for the team right around about 15 points per contest. He was injured for about 10 or so games. He's been able to come back. He's been rock solid, and Kurt Lewis does shoot 38% for three, but on very low volume. That's about all they've got with regards to outside shooting. Troy has not been quite the same team around the perimeter that they were in the past with regards to generating turnovers from a season ago, but they have been able to do a solid job down low, being a top 135 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, with Thomas Stout averaging a double-double, 14.5 points, 10 rebounds at a block and a half per contest. Victor Valdez doesn't really pop it from three, but gives you 15 points, 4.5 assists, steal and a half per contest. And then you've got the Campbell brothers lighting it up from three. They combine to shoot about 39.5% from three. Cooper Campbell, 13 points, 4.5 assists, steal and a half per contest, and then Kobe throws in there 9 points per game. So do you think that Troy should be a mid-tier favorite if they need to hit free throws to cover this game? They shoot about 73.5% at the free throw line, and they have been a team that's been able to do a solid job both on the inside and the outside. Top 100 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, top 185 in terms of 2-point shooting percentage, 145 or less in on the over, 146 or higher the under, willing to lay up to 5 with Troy, 6 or more, taking those points with Southern Miss. 8-11, 8-12. Georgia Southern, they continue their run. They're going to be facing off against Marshall. No numbers up on this game, but I said Georgia Southern as a 1-point favorite. I fully anticipate them being the underdog. I would take them on the money line. If I'm getting points with Marshall, I'll take the points, but that said, set my total to where 164.5 or less in on the over, 165.5 or higher the under. Marshall has just been playing a whole bunch of overs thus far this season. Marshall is a fast tempo team, 85th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Georgia Southern, they're even faster, 25th in terms of total possessions per game. Now, I will say, you do have to wonder if fatigue is going to be starting to get to Georgia Southern, as this team is, I believe, now in game number 4 in the last 4 days, so they've been making a nice march. You've got Spud Webb along Tyler Moore, giving you more. They combine for about 31 points per game, and Moore is now shooting 39% for three. This Georgia Southern team starting to find a little bit from the outside, shooting 34% for three, and they should have an easier time on the interior. Marshall, overall for the season, top 125 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but Matthew Van Kamen, who's a 7'4" big man, he's been dealing with injury. They're going to try to get him back for this game, but even if he can go, he's probably going to be rather limited, and that's big because Georgia Southern has been awful on the defensive glass. Their line teams have grabbed 12.5 offensive rebounds per game. They're outside the top 275 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but they've been respectable in terms of being able to just take care of the ball themselves and being able to win the turnover battle. Georgia Southern, top 90 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, and top 90 in terms of generating them on defense. Meanwhile, you've got a Marshall bunch that has been a little bit sloppy throughout the season. I do like what you're able to get out of Jalen Spear, 15.5 points, 4 boards, 5.5 assists per game, but Marshall is outside the top 160 with regards to ball security. It's a Marshall team that was shooting 40% from 3-point range at home, less than 33.5% away from home, so that suffers a little bit for Marshall. They're about a country average team with regards to 2-point shooting percentage and 3-point shooting percentage on defense, but they're giving up tons of second and third chances as well. It's another team that's outside the top 290 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They were a really good shot blocking team, but Matthew Van Kamen, he was giving the team 2.6 blocks per contest out of their 4.9 per game, so that means that you need to get up more out of Wyatt Fricks, who does give you a block and a half, 15.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and Noah Ashudi has been able to throw in there about 14.5 points per game, but I think that Georgia Southern just continues this run. I'm willing to take them on the money line. If I'm getting points with Marshall, I'll be looking at those points, and then 164.5 or less in on the over, 165.5 or higher the under. 8-13, 8-14, Idaho State and Portland State do battle out there in the Big Sky tournament. No numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. I did set Idaho State as an underdog of 8.5 points. Need 9 plus to take a shot on them. 8 or less, one to lay with Portland State, and then made a total to where 136.5 or less in on the over, 137 or higher the under. You've got a pair of teams that are not really looking to push a ton of tempo. For Idaho State, 299th in terms of total possessions per game. Portland State is much more of a mid-tempo team. Portland State is hovering right in that neighborhood about 148th, but still a few overtime games does skew that a little bit, and Portland State has been really good defensively. They're good but not great in terms of generating turnovers, but they're just so dominant down low. For Portland State, they are overall 43rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Idaho State is not. Idaho State is 334th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. We'll say this, going into yesterday, they were actually giving up 4.2 points fewer per 100 possessions when they were away from home rather than at home, but getting destroyed down low. They're outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Portland State 50th with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And it's a Portland State team that's not really going to light you up from 3-point range. They only shoot about 33.8% 40% away from home, just inside the top 200. It's an Idaho State team that they shot 38.5% from three-point range at home, 30.7% away from home. So I do think that Portland State going to be able to control the tenor of this game, and with Portland State, you have to love what you get out of your main two guys. As Jalen Henderson has been their main facilitator, 18 points, 4 boards, 6 assists, and he does not shoot it well from three. Scary Terry Miller does. Scary Terry Miller shoots 39.7% from three, 19 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists. Trayvon Minute has been able to give you 9 boards and a block per contest for Portland State. They're also a top 75 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well, and they just are not allowing second and third chances. Top 50 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so no second and third chances here for Idaho State. And Idaho State, not the same team on the glass that they were a season ago as well. For Idaho State, they have been okay in terms of not allowing second and third chances, but they're not grabbing a ton for themselves. Idaho State has been relying upon Caleb Vandergreen along Connor Hollenbeck, mainly for their offense, 2 double-figure scores with a combined 25 points per game, and then Jamison Guieta with about 9.5 points. He shoots 42% from three. A lot of the ancillary pieces are able to come through and give you some outside shooting, and then Evan Hahn does give you 2 blocks per contest, but do think that Portland State and their defense wins out here. 136 or less and on the over, 137 or higher the under, and one to lay it up to 8 with Portland State, 9 or more taking those points with Idaho State. 8-15, 8-16. Idaho and Montana State do battle out there in the Big Sky tournament, and I set Idaho as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 1 with them, 2 or more taking the points with Montana State, and then 139 or less in on the over, 140 or higher the under. I'm anticipating Montana State being the favorite, so this will most likely be a money line play on Idaho State, as they've been really good on the defensive glass, top 35 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and this team absolutely bombs it from three-point range. They're shooting over 36% from three-point range. Overall, they do find themselves in the top 90 in all of college basketball. That does go down to 34.9% away from home compared to 37.7% at home, but still like what they're bringing to the table. And this is a Montana State team that they've been shooting about 39% from three-point range at home. That goes down to 34% away from home, and they don't really have a lot of size. For Montana State, you only have one guy on the roster that's been able to give you over 5 rebounds per game. That would actually be your top scorer, and one Mr. Jed Miller, and he's been a do-it-all sort of guy. 15 points, 5.5 boards, 3 assists, shoots 41% per 3. Patrick McMahon throws in there about 4.5 boards, 14 points per game. Montana State not allowing a ton of second and third chances on the glass. They're outside the top 275 in terms of generating them for themselves, and they've been a country average team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. For this Montana State team, they're also a top 150 team with their 2-point shooting percentage, but even though Idaho has had their issues in terms of guarding the arc, they're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They are a top 125 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, as Brody Robinson has given this team rough and tumble down low. Comes over from Southeast Louisiana, about 8 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and then Colton Mitchell, Jackson Rasmussen. They've been good in the backcourt, combining for about 28 points. With Mitchell, he gives you 4 assists per game for an Idaho team that has been a top 135 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Montana State is not putting you under duress. They've been a top 100 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but they too are outside the top 200 in terms of generating turnovers. And with Montana State, they're not going to put you at the free throw line, but they themselves don't really get to the free throw line. Do you think that in the end, with Idaho not allowing those second and third chances and having a little bit more down low, they get the job done? 1 to lay up to 1 with Idaho, so I shake them on the money line. 2 or more taking the points with Montana State. 140 or higher, the under. 139 or less, the over on the total. 8-17, 8-18. San Francisco is going to be playing against Oregon State out here in lovely Las Vegas. This is for the WCC tournament, and I set San Francisco as a 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be 1 to lay up to 4 with them. 5 more taking the points with Oregon State, and then made a total to where 140 or less, I'm in on the over. 141 or higher, the under. San Francisco and Oregon State, not necessarily up-tempo team. San Francisco 249th in terms of total possessions per game. You got an Oregon State team that checking in 276th. Both of these teams don't generate many turnovers whatsoever. For the Dons, they're outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Oregon State is 264th, and that does help out an Oregon State team that has had some difficulties in terms of taking care of the ball. The Dons have been able to do quite a few of the little things well. They're not really allowing a lot of second and third chances, and San Francisco, top 55 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Oregon State is not. Oregon State is allowing teams in games played away from them to grab 34.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and that's why I have to make San Francisco the favorite here, even though they were the team that had to play on Saturdays. San Francisco should be able to dominate down low. Tyrone Riley has been able to give you 11.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. David Fuchs is up to 12.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. Ryan Beasley doesn't give you a ton down low because he's your main facilitator with about 4 assists, 13.5 points per game. And for San Francisco, they're a country average team. They shoot 34.8% from 3-point range. They've been allowing teams to shoot about 34% from 3. Again, neither here nor there, but they should be able to win that battle down low, as Oregon State right now is pretty much one guy on the roster that's been able to give you 5+ rebounds per game. Joan Munch has been able to give you 9.5 points, about 5 rebounds per game. And then Josiah Lake, a little bit of a do-it-all guy, 13 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, and he does shoot 39% from 3 points for an Oregon State team that's been solid with their three-point shooting at 35%. Does go down to 33.1% away from home, though. It's an Oregon State team that's just had a difficult time in terms of being able to provide much resistance down low, though, as in terms of their offensive rebound percentage are outside the top 3 in there as well. Good in terms of getting to the free throw line. Top 60 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. They do shoot 77% at the free throw line. Isaiah C has been able to give you about 10 points, shoots 36.5% from three-point range, but it's a San Francisco team that's the top 100 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. Do think that allows the Dons to be able to get the job done. So 140 or less in on the over, 141 or higher the under, and with San Francisco, 1 to lay up to 4 with them, 5 or more. Take the points with Oregon State. 819, 820. It is Seattle, and they're going to be facing off against Santa Clara. Most likely, I have to do this prior to the game wrapping up. This has to be up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern. Right now, Seattle's in the lead on Pacific. It's not going to vary too much based on the team that wins this, but I've got my handicap. If it's Santa Clara versus Seattle, 9 or less, 1 to lay with Santa Clara, 10 or more, taking the points with Seattle, and then we'll be setting a total to where 145 or less in on the over, 146 or higher the under, and then for Pacific, I'd be willing to take 9 plus with them, 8 or less would be willing to lay with Santa Clara, and then that total will be going up to more like a 147, 147 and a half, but that's it for Seattle. This has been a team that's just come to play on defense. They're a top 30 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Seattle's outside the top 290 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They shoot about 31.8% from 3 points away from home, but Santa Clara's not the same 3-point shooting team that they've been in the past. They shoot 34.6% from 3 points. That's just a hair above country average. Now, where Santa Clara has been making their hay is by becoming a top 45 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis and dominating the glass. 22nd in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that become an offensive rebound. Seattle's not fighting for second and third chances. 336th in the country with this regard. If you would happen to get Pacific, they've been very good in terms of not allowing second and third chances, and they've been a top 75 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage. That's why I think that Pacific, the spread will be a little bit tighter in their game, especially with them being 4th in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Seattle, though, they're not too bad in terms of disallowing second and third chances. Top 205 team in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. Do have a nice go-to scorer in Braden Maldonado, who's been able to shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point. Sort of that do-it-all guy with about 14.5 points, 3 assists per game, and then Will Hembroit, John Suckyo combined for 24 points per game, and Hembroit gives you 2.5 blocks per contest. Sean Chrysophilus has been that sharpshooter off the bench, shooting 38% from 3. Really did a good job taking that role because he was a starter the last few seasons, and he elected to come off the bench this season. Meanwhile, for Santa Clara, Elijah Mai, Christian Hammond, they combined for 30 points per game, 5 assists between the two of them. They've been able to get a lot out of Jake Amsinger down low, only about 6.5 points per game, but 5.6 rebounds, 3 assists. He shoots in the mid-30s from 3 when he needs Bucky Okoye. He's been able to do a really nice job. He's been actually shooting 77% on his 2-point shots. Gives you about 8.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Santa Clara, they are outside the top 125 in terms of their ball security as well. So Seattle, I think, is going to be able to generate some turnovers. And the way that you knock off the Santa Clara team is by being able to find good looks down low. Santa Clara is outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, albeit in the top 50 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. But Seattle's been very rock solid down low. They're a top 55 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, top 100 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they take better care of the ball than Pacific, who is outside the top 300 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. So thinking that we get Seattle, 9 or less would be willing to lay with Santa Clara, 10 or more, taking the points with Seattle, and then 145 or less in on the over, 146 or higher the under. If it is Pacific, I'd be willing to take pretty much a plus with Pacific, and then that total goes to a 147 or so. And then this is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games, 821, 822. This is the Summit League title game, and this is between the two North Dakota schools, North Dakota and North Dakota State. Made North Dakota State the 12.5 point favorite, willing to lay up to 12 with them, 13 or more, taking the points with North Dakota, and then 150 or less in on the over, 151 or higher the under. These two teams ironically just played on February 28th, and North Dakota got blasted 96-63. We've got a North Dakota State team that has really come along for the ride with their 3-point shooting. It was rough to begin the season, up to about 85th in the country. It is a North Dakota State team that's been very good in terms of generating turnovers, and really both of these teams have been supreme with regards to generating turnovers. It's like the only thing that North Dakota does well on defense. North Dakota 33rd in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. North Dakota State, they're more around about 55th. And while North Dakota is going to give up some looks on the inside, North Dakota State, I should say, it's a North Dakota Fighting Hawks team that you can just absolutely destroy them down low with. North Dakota State, they're about 231st in the country with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. The Fighting Hawks are 348th, and that's not a great scene. You've had for North Dakota, Grayson Human really be able to step up. He's been their top scorer with over 13 points per contest. contest. And then Eli King is just sort of that do-it-all sort of guy. He's been able to give the team 12 points, 5 boards, pair of assists, pair of steals per contest, but it's a North Dakota team that is well outside the top 200 with their own three-point shooting percentage, as you've been able to get quite a bit from the outside out of Zach Kraft, who shoots 40% for three. He's up to about 8 points per game, but you just don't have a lot down low either. With Eli King, he's the lone guy on the roster that gives you over 5.3 rebounds per game, so North Dakota State, they're going to be an edge there, as you've got Travion Carson, who's been able to supply about 12.5 points, 6.5 boards, throws in their 3 assists per game. Damari Wheeler-Thomas, 14 points, 3 assists, and the other advantage that you are going to have for North Dakota is that they've actually done a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball. They are a top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. North Dakota State just outside the top 100, but again, they're just not executing well on the inside. Themselves are outside the top 250 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and then you've got a guy in Andy Stefanovic who's been able to give you 9 points, 5 assists, steal and per contest for North Dakota State. North Dakota State does not put you on the free throw line either, so you're not going to be able to get cheap opportunities there, with North Dakota State coming on very strong, shooting 39% from three-point range in conference play. I do think that they take it to a North Dakota team that they just really gamble for turnovers, and if they don't get one, they give up a lot of open looks. So I'm going to be willing to lay up to 12 with North Dakota State, 13 or more, taking the points with North Dakota, and then 150 or less. And on the over 151 or higher, the under. And now let's hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-527, 306-528. You've got High Point and Winthrop doing battle for the Big South title. Right now, High Point a 6.5 point favor. Total is between 164 to 164.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Winthrop. I set them as a 5-point underdog. Winthrop has battled High Point really well this season. For Winthrop, they beat them outright in pretty much a lone loss that High Point took in the Big South, and then lost by 2 when they had to play at High Point. High Point has dealt with a little bit of an injury to Cameron Fletcher, and he's come back, but he hasn't quite been the same guy that he was beginning the season, and Winthrop has been life or death in their last 2 games. But Logan Duncombe, I think, is going to be able to do a nice job down low with 18.5 points, 9 rebounds per game. It's a High Point team that really prides themselves on turnovers. They're a top 12 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. On defense, on offense, they've been a top 10 team in terms of taking care of the ball, but you also have a Winthrop team that has done a nice job themselves of being able to value the ball. In games played away from home, they do rank in the top 25 in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. It's a solid 3-point shooting team with Cody Kluett shooting 42.5% from 3, 14 points per game. And then Thalen Berry, Kareem Rozier, they combine to shoot about 36.5% from 3, combined for about 24.5 points per contest. And for this Winthrop team, they're very good in terms of getting to the free throw line. Top 10 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. High Point is one of the best teams in terms of getting to the charity stripe as well. And they've been a good free throw shooting team as well. They shoot about 74.5% at the free throw line. Scary Terry Anderson, he's able to supply about 15.5 points, 6 boards. Rob Barton, he gives you about 15 points per game, but it does feel like the just sort of offense that Winthrop plays has really been a little bit of a kryptonite for this High Point team, as High Point has really given it up to them. They gave up 80 plus points in the first 2 sessions. Now, I do think that with the intensity ratcheted up, you're going to see 2 teams that play very up-tempo. Winthrop, in terms of total possessions per game, 34th in all of college basketball. High Point, 61st. That's going to slow down just a little bit, and I do think that the third time around, they're going to be able to figure out something to slow both teams down, and High Point has been very good on the inside. Top 30 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, but I do think that Winthrop does a good job holding in here. So I set my line at 5. I'm going to take the 6+ here with Winthrop, and I like the under. I set my total at a 161. This game does not have numbers. 306-529, 306-530. Central Arkansas and Queens NC, they do battle for the Atlantic Sun final. I've got my handicap. I'm willing to lay up to 2 with Central Arkansas, 3 or more. Take the points with Queens NC. Set a total of 162.5. 162 or less, and on the over. 163 or higher, the under. And I do have a pair of teams that play at a pretty brisk pace. Central Arkansas, 122nd in terms of total possessions per game. Queens NC is 78th, and Queens NC, top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're really doing a nice job in terms of getting the ball down low, and this has been a Central Arkansas team that has left something to be desired with regards to their interior defense, but you have a Queens NC team that leaves something to be desired in all forms of defense. They're well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Central Arkansas, 345th in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Queens NC, they're about 289th, but it is a Central Arkansas team that can really go off from 3-point range, with having Cameron Hunter give you 16 points, 4+ boards, 3+ assists, and he leads the charge for a Central Arkansas team that right now from 3-point range shoots about 35.3%. That's a top 100 mark in the country. Queens NC, 35.4%. So both of these teams on the same wavelength, but for Queens NC in games played away from home, that does go down to about 32.7% from the outside. Queens does have quite a few options. You've got 6 different guys that give you double figures, all between 10.3 and 13.3 points per game. Nasir Mann along with Avante Parker. Tucker are your top rebounders. They combine for about 11 boards per contest, and it is a Queens NC team that's done a nice job in terms of value in the ball. They're a top 85 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, in terms of taking care of the ball, but do have a Central Arkansas team that has also been able to do a really good job in terms of generating those turnovers, and I think that that's going to be the big kicker in this game. For Central Arkansas, in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, this team is in the top 65 in all of college basketball, and for Central Arkansas, along with what you've been able to get out of Hunter, you've had a bevy of guys be able to step up. I like what I've been seeing out of Cole McCormick, who's been able to give you about 9 points, 3.5 boards, some versatility at about 6'6", and then Ty Robinson, 14 points, 5.5 boards, pair of assists per contest. Luke Moore gives you more with about 3.5 assists per game, and Central Arkansas, another top 125 team in terms of value in the ball, and they're just good in terms of executing on the inside themselves. Central Arkansas, top 65 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, so I think they get an up and down game here. I set my line to where 162 or less in on the over, 163 or higher the under end. Central Arkansas, I'm willing to lay up to deuce with them 3 or more, taking the points with Queens NC. 3-6-5-31, 3-6-5-32. Colgate is going to be on the road against Lehigh. Lehigh, a home underdog of 1.5 to 2.5 points. Start on this game, 147.5, and I mean, Colgate, the 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Colgate group that has been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of executing down low, and that's what Lehigh really wants you to do. Lehigh is 11th in the country in terms of percentage of opponents' field goal attempts that come from inside the 3-point line. It's a Colgate team that is about 133rd with their 2-point shooting percentage. Colgate also does a nice job in terms of taking care of the ball, 55th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Lehigh right now, they are 254th in terms of taking care of the ball. Lehigh, about a country average team in terms of generating turnovers. Colgate is not necessarily a team that puts you under too much stress. They are outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers generated on per possession basis away from home, but love what Jalen Cox brings to the table. Maybe not the top scorer in this game, but the most versatile player. 17.5 points, 5 boards, 5.3 assists, shoots 37.5% from 3, and then Ben Tweedy's a 39.5% 3-point shooter with about 10 points per game. Andrew Alaseko has been able to give you 14.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, and then on the Lehigh side of things, they're just getting wrecked on the glass. They're outside the top 315 in terms of overall rebound percentage. You do have Hank Alvey, who gives you 7 boards, pair of blocks, 14.5 points per game, and Nasir Woodlock, a great go-to scorer, 21 points on 44% 3-point shooting. Alvey also shoots 42% from 3, but very, very low volume there. They've been dealing with an injury to Eduardo Benoit, so Joshua Ingram has had to step up with about 10.5 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists per game, but I do think that the turnover woes are going to be a little bit costly. They're not necessarily the greatest team at executing on the inside outside the top 175 with that regard, and it's a Lehigh team that shoots about 73.5% the free throw line in a pressure spot. Colgate more around about 74.5%. I think that Colgate does a little things to be able to get the job done here. So I did set Colgate as the favorite of 2.5 points. I'm willing to lay up to 2 with them. And then with the total sub at a 146.5. So at a 147 plus, I like the under. 306.533, 306.534. Boston U is on the road against Navy. Navy is a 6.5 to a 7.5 point favorite. 137.5 is the total. Maybe my total 134.5. I like the under. Neither of these teams are going to be looking to push a fast tempo. Navy is 323rd in terms of total possessions per game. Boston U is 336th, and Boston U has done a great job in terms of bombing it from 3-point range. This is a group that they are a top 15 team in the country. They're shooting over 39.5% per 3, but Navy is allowing teams to shoot less than 30% per 3. They're a top 15 team with that regard, and I do think that that defense is going to be able to come to play here. It's a Navy group that is going to have a nice advantage down low with Aiden KOA, give you 15 plus points, 10 plus rebounds per game, and then you've been able to have about 18 points per game out of Austin Benjini. He shoots 44 plus percent from 3, and Boston U has been getting wrecked on defense. 306th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Now you do have Michael Air McNair, 45% 3-point shooter with about 17 points per game. Ben Defty, 15 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. And then you've had Ben Roy be out of the fold, so they've looked to Sam Hughes to be able to give you a bit more. And he's been very versatile, and he's been rock solid. 9.5 points, shoots 36.5% from 3-point range. And for Boston U, about a country average team, shooting about 72.5% at the free throw line, but not likely to get too many opportunities against an AV team that has been so stout defensively. You've also been able to have Don Draper just do a little bit of everything for the team. Throws in there 8.5 points, 2.5 assists, 2 steals per contest, as Navy has been pretty solid in terms of generating turnovers as well. Top 120 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, with them also being a top 70 team with their 3-point shooting percentage above 36% and that tough defense. I think that they find a way to get the job done in a low tempo game. So by total 134.5, I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 8 here with Navy. 306.535, 306.536. Houston Christian is going to be playing against New Orleans. These are games out there in the great state of Louisiana for the Southland Tournament, and New Orleans is a 4.5 to a 5-point favorite. Total on this game, 141.5. I think it does help a little bit that this is in the great state of Louisiana for New Orleans, and I did set them as a 5.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Houston Christian looking to play very slow. 351st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. New Orleans, 81st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. The Crypto kryptonite for New Orleans has been really their perimeter play. They shoot just 32% from three. That's around 85th in the country, and they're outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. On defense, outside the top 275 in terms of generating turnovers, but he's a Christian away from home. They only shoot about 31.1% from three-point, and he's a Christian just is not efficient on defense. 272nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, goes outside the top 280 in games played away from home, and for he's a Christian, they just don't have anything down low. Meanwhile, you've got MJ Thomas for this New Orleans team, 7.5 boards, 10.5 points per game. Churchill Abus throws in their 5 boards, a block and a half per contest for a bunch of Houston Christian that has been outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. You do have a guy in Kylan Green who's been able to give you 10 points, 4.5 assists per game, and then DeMarco Bethea, he throws in there 4.9 boards, 9.9 points per game, but Green is the lone double-figure scorer on the team, and Bethea is a lone guy that gives you over 4 rebounds per game, so lacking a lot of pizzazz there. It's also a group that shoots just 70% at the free throw line. New Orleans games do involve a lot of fouls. They're one of the best teams in the country in terms of getting to the free throw line. New Orleans has been shooting about 74.7% at the free throw line, which Jakevian Buckley give you 14.5 points, 5 boards, 5.5 assists, shoots only about 33% from 3, but then Colton Benson shoots 92% of the free throw line, 16 points, about 36% from distance. I think that how strong New Orleans is on the inside, though they do give up second and third chances outside the top 300 with regards to defensive rebound percentage, but who's going to pull them in for Houston Christian? That allows this New Orleans team to be able to get the job done. Set my line at 5.5. I'm going to be 108, and do like the over. Set my total 143.5, and wrap things up with 306, 537, 306, 538. Northwestern State is going to be playing against Nichols. Nichols is a 2.5 point favorite. So this game 141.5, and I like the under. I set my total at a 140.5. Have a Northwestern State team that has been really not pushing any tempo whatsoever. 327th in terms of total possessions per game. Nichols a mid-tempo team at 204th in terms of total possessions per game. And this Nichols team has been able to do a nice job in terms of generating turnovers. 21st in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis generated. Now overall they're about 253rd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Northwestern State though is 263rd, and Northwestern State just has absolutely nothing down low. As for Northwestern State, you've got one player on the roster that gives you over 3.8 rebounds per game. Willie Williams, he's up to 10 points, 8.4 rebounds per game. And then Micah Thomas has been able to give you 17 points, 2.5 assists, does shoot 38% from 3. Izzy Miles shoots 39.5% from 3. It's a country average team, shooting about 33.3% from 3-point range, but they don't really execute on the inside. This group is well outside the top 275 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, and that's a big kryptonite for Nichols. Nichols has been well outside the top 320 with their opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, but kind of a Northwestern State team that's well outside the top 250 with that regard as well. Now Nichols only shoots 66.2% of the free throw line, so you do have to have a little bit of fear there, but Jalik Dunkley along Jalen Surreals, they combine for about 25 points per game. Between the two of them, they shoot 35% from 3. Sincere Malone does a good job with his versatility. 11.5 points, 4.5 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals per contest. I think that generating those turnovers against a Northwestern State team that has not done a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. They've been well outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. That does allow Nichols to get the job done here. Sub my line at 5.5. I'm willing to lay up to 5 with Nichols, and on the other sub my total at a 140.5, and that wraps things up for the Sunday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like sharing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Larry CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm coming at you guys every single day with picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.